Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammadin wa alihi wa azwajihi wa zurriyatihi ajma'in. I'm going to talk a bit about Wael. I think that's how you write it. Hallaq. Wael Hallaq. What does B stand for, I wonder? And so far I have tried to avoid talking about him because, to tell you the truth, I'm not really interested in Wael Hallaq. And it's not because of any arrogance or anything, because Wael Hallaq his one specialization is Islamic law, and I guess the other one is sort of postmodern thought, political, especially Foucault. He seemed to be sort of a pseudo-Foucauldian. And if I'm interested in Islamic law, I'm not going to read Wael Hallaq. I'll just go to some, scholar and study with him or her. And I'm interested in Foucault, but I'll study Foucault rather than Wael Hallaq. Why would I study Wael Hallaq to study Foucault, for example? And personally, I think he's a minor figure, and it's just strange. It's just I think it's the indication of the poverty of Islamic thinking about the West that Wael Hallaq has become a sort of celebrity figure, not only in the Middle East but also in countries like Pakistan, etc. But people have been asking me to read him and asking me questions about him, especially about his book Impossible Estate. So maybe we'll read a bit from Impossible Estate at some point. But if somebody is really interested in reading Impossible Estate, he or she should read about theory of state and history of state, especially modern state, independently before. Then they will see that there's nothing much in there. So basically what I'm going to do is just think aloud about, how should we read and how we shouldn't read somebody like Wael Hallaq. And just to be clear, nothing to do with Wael Hallaq as a person. I don't know him. And I'm not privy to his intentions. He's a Palestinian Christian, like Edward Said, I guess, who was born in Palestine. I think that's all I know about him as a person. And when I read people, I read their words. I'm not privy to their intention. I don't relate their words to their intention. I just read words independently in connection with their sentences and in connection with the chapters and books, etc. So in that sense, I'm sort of a functionalist and structuralist in the sense that I don't worry about people's intention. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, you know, he knows the people's intention the best. So it's just, so it's not about Wael Hallaq as a person, but how should we read somebody, those sort of writings, and how we shouldn't. And obviously, by we I mean Muslims. Those are my primary addressees, and I think those are the people who would be primarily interested in this sort of talk. But obviously, anyone can listen to what I say and think whatever they want to think about it. Our doors are not shut to anyone. Okay, so how we should and how we shouldn't read Wael Hallaq, somebody like Wael Hallaq, or how should we understand? And I think I'll take it to another question, how, and I think that's more important. How should we read Foucault, someone like Foucault, and how we shouldn't? Read Foucault. Because at the end of the day, Wael Hallaq is some sort of pseudo-Foucauldian. And if we think about the reaction or range of reaction to Foucault's work over the years, we have similar sort of situation with Wael Hallaq, even though, Foucault is an original thinker. Wael Hallaq is just a minor figure. But the reactions are the same because, it's a type of work. So when Foucault was writing, or even afterwards, there was a reaction from staunch modernists. So these staunch modernists basically accuse Foucault of betrayal of modernity. And betrayal of the West, if you equate modernity with the West. And sort of they accused him of waging internal war against modernity, internal jihad, so to speak. By his emphasis on, on the contingency of modernity and relativism or whatever. And these accusers were on the right as well as left. Obviously, those who were accusing him from the right accuse him of the left as well, because they already think that the left is the betrayal of the West and modernity. which is not true, obviously. And Foucault was hardly any leftist. I mean, he was as much of a leftist as much he was a rightist or the conservative, or so that's a betrayal of modernity, betrayal of the West, and betrayal of the modernity and the West, and obviously these voices became louder at especially when he wrote his journalistic pieces covering Islamic revolution in Iran, etc. And the pseudo feminists have never forgiven him for that, especially the Iranian anti-revolutionary traitors living in the West. So this was the first. The second one were more mature people like supporters of modernity, but those who were aware of the internal vulnerabilities of modernity. Someone like Habermas, for example. So they try to address Foucault's critique of modernity and try to learn from Foucault and try to answer the so-called relativism of Foucault. And for example, Habermas tried to in the face of the Foucauldian critique of modernist justificatory strategies, he tries to come up with new ways in which modernity can be defended as a universal civilization. So for them, for a person like Habermas, the main thing is justification. So it's not that Foucault abandons modernity. What he abandons is a particular universalist justification of modernity. And someone like Habermas tries to say that, it's still possible, although with new weapons and with the new techniques, to justify modernity on the universal basis. Okay, so these people sort of see the force of Foucault's internal critique of modernity, and they see Foucault as critique of modernity, as betraying modernity as well, but at justificatory level. They don't see it them as outsiders, etc. They know that they believe in modernity, but they only realize that you can't believe in modernity based on universal pretensions. So someone like Habermas tries to defend modernity based on the universalist claims. Okay. Now, among Muslims, there are two types of response to somebody like Foucault. Response which takes sides of modernity. So you can say that this is sort of conservative response. So they join forces with somebody like Habermas, not because they believe in modernity, but because they think that a thinking like that of Foucault strikes on universalism. And universalism is something shared between modernity and Islam. So based on this shared allegiance to universalism, they join forces with someone like Habermas, not in person, but like you'll see glimpses of these type of these type of this type of thinking in somebody like, for example, Hamza Yusuf and the other pseudo some other pseudo universalist from Muslims, among Muslims. Okay, but then there's a large minority of large majority of, not minority, of Muslim who actually are thrilled by Foucauldian critique, because they see it as a, obviously, which it is, as a critique of modernity and the West and its universalism. So they see it as a sort of a space in which Islam can be, and its practices and its claims can be reasserted. And that's the basic charm for these Muslims of Foucauldian like thinking like Wael Hallaq, thinking like postmodernism in general. Okay, and now I'll just talk about why both of these Muslim critiques are basically wrong and why they are wrong. Now, the problem with Habermasian, even if they might not have read Habermasian modernism, conservative Muslim critique of someone like Foucault. And the problem with this is that there can't be alliance with modernism, even on the basis of some sort of universalism, is a misguided alliance, because Islamic universalism is not a universalism shared with modernity, but it is a unique universalism, Abrahamic universalism. وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ. So that سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ include modernism and universalism of modernism as well. So they already, by joining forces with universalism, they already compromise the uniqueness of Islam, even if for the sake of Islam in their own mind. Obviously, this is very compressed critique, but I would maybe in the coming days I will elaborate on that. Okay. Now, the problem with the so-called leftist postmodernist Muslims. So these are both camps. I'm assuming that their actual allegiance is basically to Islam. So I'm not talking about those Muslims who have basically left the allegiance to Islam and they are Muslim just because they were born in Muslim families. I'm not talking about those people. I have nothing to do with them. Leftist, postmodernist, Muslim, Foucauldian critique. They are thrilled by the critique of modernity. And they see people like Foucault and Hallaq as, some sort of their allies against the hegemony of the West and hegemony of modernity. And their problem is that they don't understand that people like Foucault and Wael Hallaq, their basic allegiance is still to modernity. It's only that they say that modernity is contingent. It can't be justified on the old, So it's there because it is our way of life. We can't defend it universally. So in that sense, it is a retreat. But that retreat is not towards Islam. And we need a critique of modernity, and we can learn from Foucault and Habermas, but we need to develop a uniquely Islamic critique of modernity. So when you ally yourself with Foucauldians and Hallaqians, you already compromise the uniqueness of Islam. So the correct way is to learn from both Foucault and Habermas, but from a distance, without, and that you can only do if you also, that type of learning from a distance without accepting them can only happen when you first deconstruct Foucault and deconstruct Habermas, lay bare their basic allegiance, and then you can learn from their critique of modernity. Similarly, you can learn from Habermas' justificatory strategies, but this learning can only happen once you develop critique of Habermas first, and reject them totally and deconstruct them. After you can learn from Foucault and you can learn from Habermas only after you have totally rejected. Only then you can use those things which you have learned to defend Islam in its own unique manner, by differentiating Islam totally from Foucauldianism as well as from Habermasianism, from modernism as well as postmodernism. Okay, so that was my preface. And once you have understood this, then we don't have to spend much time, at least in this session, on Hallaq, because you can put Hallaq instead of Foucault here, even if Hallaq is a much minor figure. What has happened is the same reaction. So there are modernists who accuse Hallaq of anti-modernism and, aligning himself with anti-Western and anti-modernistic forces, and not developing a critique of Islam, for example. Which is not true, obviously. Obviously, probably they can't accuse him of anti-Westernism because he was born in Palestine, and then you have both Muslim. You have you have those who are thrilled by, and they are majority, by Hallaq, like they were thrilled by Foucault. And among them, you have sincere Muslims, even some Muslim with sort of and then there is a minority which will reject Hallaq as a relativist and postmodernist and align themselves with conservatives, conservative defenders of universalism, or in these days, with conservatives, literally, as it is happening in America right now on the issue of gay rights, all that. But people like Wael Hallaq, I think I heard just fleetingly Dr. Mukhtar Shankiti talking about. He was talking on Ibrahim Sakran's book on Orientalism, and Ibrahim Sakran, who is in Saudi jail, by the way, release him from the shackles of these shayateen of Al Saud. But what Ibrahim Sakran, according to Shankiti, has said about Wael Hallaq was that he rejects Orientalism, for example, only in order to reassert Orientalist claim in his own way, or something like that. And I think that is very insightful. That's what postmodernists like, or pseudo-Foucauldians like. They would reject modernity in order to reassert it on a different ground, but still they reassert modernity. And their basic allegiance is to modernity still, even if it is on contingent basis. And their critique of modernity and their apparent alliance with the other is just that, the apparent alliance. Okay, thank you.